Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist for Liberty channels. My name is Thomas Sheedy, president of Atheist for Liberty, and I'm really glad that a lot of you are tuning in tonight, and more of you I know we're going to be tuning in and watching as this stream progresses. We've kickstarted 2023 off in a pretty darn good way. We had Actual Justice Warrior on as our first guest of the new year, followed by my good friend Alf, fellow YouTubers that we're trying to grow and support, as they've been great supporters of our organization and everything that we do. And we're already have a bunch of different people lined up. We got Colin Wright on for round two, and I'm going to introduce him in a moment. But we also have quite a few others that have never been on this channel before that we're going to happily showcase to all of you. We got Dr. Robert Price coming up fairly soon. We got Yasmin Mohammed, who's a human rights activist and ex-Muslim. We got Dr. Gad Saad as well coming up in February. So we got a bunch of people already who are excited to be showcasing their ideas and their current work here within Atheists for Liberty. And we're doing a lot of great work within this organization. We care about free speech, free thinking, and freedom for all. We do activism on the ground now. We're trying to grow our online programs, and we're trying to listen to all of you as members and supporters of our organization to make sure that we're doing a good job. It's thanks to individual contributions from people like you that makes me have a job, that makes people passionate enough to see this organization to continue to grow and for us to get more infrastructure. Not only does Atheists for Liberty defend Enlightenment values, but we seek to learn from the greatest minds of the 21st century. So the reason why we got Colin Wright coming on for a second time and not showcasing more people for a first time is there's quite a bit of interesting things that have happened in the culture wars recently, relating to him, relating to myself, relating to others. And getting him on and chatting about a few different things that have been popping up on social media, I think it's necessary, because it pertains to a core element of our mission, and we're going to get into that very soon. But I'm going to introduce Colin Wright in a moment. I also want to state that our member of the week is Brianna Cole. Be like Brianna and become a member of Atheists for Liberty today. Go to atheistforliberty.org, click the Join Us Now button in the center of the homepage, and make a 501c3 tax-deductible donation today. It means a lot. So, without further ado, Dr. Colin Wright is an evolutionary biologist, and besides being on the advisory board of Atheists for Liberty, the founding editor of Reality's Last Stand, and a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. He's an academic advisor for the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. He's interested in the sex and gender debate and has essays published in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, The Times, Quillette, and elsewhere. He's a strong proponent of secular humanism, free thought, free speech, and academic freedom. Dr. Colin Wright, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Glad to have you on for round two.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm glad we have you on. And like I said in the monologue just a minute ago, there's a reason why we have you. There's a core element to Atheist Liberty's mission that makes us quite firebrand in our approach. We've seen an alliance sort of made up between atheist academics, atheist activists, and religious people who care about freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of speech on college campuses, the ability to critique any idea without being shut down in a public debate. Because of the downfall of the atheist movement, but what we kind of saw with wokeism, or what we now know today of as wokeism, infiltrating the community, a lot of us were able to kind of open our eyes and see the problem with this new up-and-coming religion of wokeism. So we've made friends with people in, say, the conservative movement, non-religious activists, but also religious activists too. And a lot of people, including yourself, I know, have been more than happy to put certain theological differences aside in order to engage in broader fights, such as, the fight for objective reality when it comes to things like gender and various other different topics. And you've been one of the most nice, cordial people I know in this up and coming new counterculture to be willing to work with just about anybody. And it's kind of disappointing that not everybody is kind of on board, at least not on board fully with how we'd like them to be. You wrote a very interesting article based on an event that happened. So several weeks ago, Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, he has a show, I guess a private show called The Charlie Kirk Show. He had Fox News' Tucker Carlson on the program. And when Tucker was on there, I think they were talking about Sam Harris. And Tucker said, I've just had it with atheism at this point. And Charlie Kirk ended up replying and saying, I couldn't agree more. And just from a branding aspect, a big tent kind of conservative movement aspect that they've kind of molded themselves in over the last few years, I find it to be fairly bad optics on their end. I think it's damaging to their movement and damaging to their brand. And you wrote a very amazing article on your Substack called Republicans Don't Alienate the Atheists. We have a link to Reality's Last Stand, by the way, in the description of the stream, everybody. So if you can go down there and subscribe and pay to read Reality's Last Stand, that'd be great. You'd be supporting Dr. Wright here. But tell us, if you can, for a minute or two, why you decided to go out of your way to not only see what was on the Twitter sphere of viewing that Charlie Kirk show clip, but writing an article yourself about it.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to say something because I've been in the atheist space for a long time, and that used to be kind of the main focus of what I did. But it hasn't been the main focus in the last several years. And I think sometimes it's good to kind of remind my followers who I am, because some people will follow me. If you follow me the last couple of years, you'll see me, talking to people who are on the right of things, the anti-woke type movement. Then people might get this impression that I'm just, some lifelong Republican or something, or that I might even be a Christian. And so I just wanted to sort of flex those atheist bona fides that I have and remind people that, I'm against the whole woke ideology, the social justice stuff, for a lot of the same reasons I'm against a lot of the traditional, monotheistic religions. I think it's very faith-based, and it's anti-empirical. And so to hear Tucker Carlson and someone who I enjoy, really, I think, make this bad strategic blunder to say that their tolerance for atheism has dwindled to nothing at this point, I think is what he said. Yeah. Based on, these mischaracterizations of what atheists even are. He said an atheist is someone who, is completely certain that there is no God. And he sort of had this, all atheists are these angry people who are just, have this active belief that they're certain that God doesn't exist. And I don't know any atheists who really believe that. And so I thought it was just a really strategic blunder at this time where people like me, who are been disaffected from sort of the left because of all the woke stuff going on, I'm personally ready to vote Republican for the first time in my life. I've never voted Republican before. Even the last election, I voted for Tulsi Gabbard. I wrote her in. And, there's still a lot of hesitancy because of that sort of Christian right, the faith-based, reasoning they have over there. And, I'm probably still voting Republican based on, even though there's this sentiment over there against atheism. But there's probably a lot of people who are more, against sort of the Republican brand than I am, who may have been willing to vote Republican or vote for someone on the right, who just, will see Tucker Carlson, who's in many ways just the face of conservatism, just flat out say that his tolerance for people like you is absolutely zero. And I think that's just a terrible blunder because, we have a time where the right is trying to be more like pro-science and things and biological realities. Mm-hmm. And as I said in the article, if you go back to the atheist movement before it was taken over by the woke people, the whole woke ideology, this was some of like the most, I wouldn't say maybe politically conservative, but they were very strict adherents to scientific evidence and reason. These were the free thinkers who were willing to just follow reason and logic wherever it may lead, empirically based, open to discussion, that kind of stuff that we're saying that both sides are kind of criticizing the far left for right now, which is shutting down debate and cancel culture and all this stuff. What happened to the atheist movement wasn't really, it didn't come from within the atheist movement. It was really just a lot of political reasons that went in and sort of took over the movement and sort of rebranded it as Democrats who happen to be atheists rather than atheists who, care about separation of church and state. So I wrote this piece to kind of address that and tell Republicans that you really need to be able to scrape these disaffected liberals, because now's the time to do it, because they're the whole politically homeless center that is bigger than it's probably ever been right now. And so you don't want to make your side just seem, too crazy for them.
Exactly. We, by the way, pertaining to a good chunk of things that you just said right there, Colin, everybody here can go to our channel, open it as a new tab once the stream is done, by the way, everybody, and check out our previous, Colin Wright's previous appearance on the channel where we get into the nitty and gritty about what happened to the atheist community. There's a good chunk of reasons why that still needs to be included as we discuss this topic, but we get more into it there. But I want to read a few amazing things that you ended up writing in this article. You ended up talking about how Tucker said, my tolerance for atheism has really dwindled to nothing at this point. He follows up by saying, I just find it hilarious and like so childish. I just can't take it seriously. And I don't mean to fully criticize. Like personally, there's some things I know that he says that I would agree with. I'm glad, for example, also that he platformed you on his Tucker Carlson Today program. Very wise choice for him to do that. I just find it to be interesting, though, and it has nothing to do per se entirely with religious belief, because there are a lot of people that are moderate religious believers who at least understand the atheist, non-religious kind of perspective on why we don't believe in a God. It's the same way why we don't believe in CRT. It's the same reason why we don't believe in a million genders. We don't acknowledge people's fantasies as truth. And, I've met plenty of Christians who at least understand and respect my point of view, because I like to always look at the evidence and see if something is actually real or not in this physical world that we have. And so I just find it to be very bad optics on his end to say that. And, Charlie Kirk ends up saying, I totally agree with this. I know they were also talking about Sam Harris a little earlier in that show. And I understand that there's some political reasons why some people on the right wouldn't like Sam Harris, but just to inject that attack on atheism, I find it to be very inappropriate. You follow up by saying in the article that Carlson's statement that his tolerance for atheism has really dwindled to nothing at this point is a divisive blunder at a time when the right can't electorally afford it. There are many atheists, myself included, who have been alienated from the left by the religious dogmatism of woke ideology, who have serious reservations about the right, and yet are still poised to vote Republican for the first time ever in the next election. Making this group feel even more alienated and politically homeless than they currently do is a major misstep. Now, I understand the costs when it comes to setting up conventions and trying to reach out to different demographics to get them interested in your branding, social media work that goes into things too, especially when a presidential election is kicking up. I've seen so many efforts from the right, going into the 2020 election to pull in LGBT people, to try to get people of different racial demographics involved too, and to have this amazing branding of we are not the stereotype of what you thought of us to be. And I've noticed just over the last 2 years or so, there's kind of been, I would argue things are getting better. There's a reason why Atheists for Liberty continues to go to CPAC every single year, and we keep making progress in that area. But with some of the actors that are in the movement, I almost feel like things are regressing. People are talking about gay marriage again, as if the Obergefell v. Hodges 2015 Supreme Court decision was a bad thing. That this kind of 2010 style of attacking the secular humanists and the free thinkers. How dare they? I thought we were past that at this point. And it's just so tiring to see that I have to deal with especially with me and what we have to do at AFL, the same old talking points. And it's just a shame that you got to deal with that on your feed too. I want to point out one other thing too, before we get into more of the Twitter sphere of everything that followed. You ended up writing something really awesome. While some non-woke atheists have set up new atheist organizations, such as Thomas Sheedy, who founded Atheists for Liberty, for which I am an advisor, many of us who are active in the atheist movement feel that illiberal woke ideologies now pose a threat to society, more of a threat to society than theistic religions. And so we put most of our time and effort on that battlefront. But this requires forming alliances with those we had once quarreled with. I couldn't have said it better myself. We at Atheists for Liberty, we always try to make alliances with people who disagree with us. When we go to CPAC, when we go to Freedom Fest, we end up working with people on a variety of issues that we wouldn't agree 100% on everything on. But I think these people, especially if we're dedicating our time, our money, our activism on going into their movement and showing them our expertise on a certain field, they got to treat us with the same respect. if we're going to put religious differences aside in this new culture war, it has to play by on both ends. And I think you've been doing a great job at showing your respect to everybody else. But Twitter has not been so kind, and Twitter has turned into a crazy place. But I wanted to showcase some of that too, if you don't mind. But if you want to quickly follow up on anything else that I just read in the article, very well done, I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, so I do think, the woke problem is much more dangerous than currently, anyway, than the religious right. And a lot of this is because, as I mentioned before on other podcasts, that I find myself able to speak to the Christians, to a lot of these people who are adherents to traditional religions, because they're inherently modernist approaches to finding truth. We come to different conclusions about things. If you go to at some point, you do sort of approach the wall of faith where it's just you can't go past that. But there is a big movement of the whole reasonable faith movement. You got like the William Lane Craigs who are willing to debate people. There's like a vibrant community on YouTube of atheists and Christians just, having debates and hashing it out and being friendly and stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
But a lot of the woke stuff, built into their ideology is this refusal to share a platform with someone who disagrees with them, because, this is viewed as a form of bigotry, and you're sort of breathing air into the bigotry and giving them a stage to spew their hate, even though, what we're saying is not hateful whatsoever. So they have a completely different approach to truth. The truth is constructed around you. Everything's a social construct, all that type of stuff. And so that's something that needs to be just sort of stamped out. Like, we need to get rid of that. We need to have both the modernists, whether you're atheistic or whether you're theistic, can deal with this. And then we can maybe go back and deal with what we were arguing about, in 2010 or something like
that. I mostly have the same mindset. Unfortunately, with us, because not everybody is playing the same ball game that we're playing, we're kind of having to fight both battles now.
Yeah, and also another corollary what's going to happen too is, we join with the right, the Christian right, to defeat the woke stuff. Politics is not surgical. You can't pick an exact policy. We're just going to deal with this, and then we can just deal with this thing in isolation. It's kind of a package deal. So by sort of making the right stronger, by pushing this away, we are going to sort of breathe air into a lot of the sort of, empowering the Christian narratives. They're going to, maybe want to start going more authoritarian, because they're sort of getting that sense that they're in a more, powerful position now to project their views on society. So, this is just sort of a pendulum. I think it's going to go through these different phases where defeat wokeness is going to empower these aspects of the right that we're going to need to stamp down. And, it's just going to be this fluctuating beast through time that, people like you and me who are anti-woke atheists, we're always going to have, a new head of the Hydra that we're going to have to chop off at any given time. So yeah, that's how I think it's going to end up. Like we're going to fuel some of the rise of some of the, traditional religious authoritarian stuff, but hopefully it's not going to be as bad as what the woke stuff would be if that, takes full control.
It's why we're building up Atheists for Liberty. We're not taking any chances whatsoever. And regardless of what culture war we're in, regardless of what adversary is more totalitarian, I think it's important that we stay true to our values. And I want to say thank you for staying true to yours. A lot of us that are in certain movements can be politically correct and lie about our true intentions, our views on theology or faith in order to get ahead somewhere, either on the left or the right. And I think in order to be a decent actor in our careers as we advance forth, as cultures change, conferences, grow and shut down, what's going to be around in the end is you, and what you stood for throughout your career, who respected you, who stood by you, and so I always appreciate people that are able to speak up about their views on religion while simultaneously combating wokeism too. Not everybody has done that. Some people have, unfortunately, gone down a route of preferring one poison pill over another. But I appreciate you for doing that, and hence why I think it's really good to have you on for a second time so soon. So social media. itself went a little berserk about that. But I think I want to showcase a few tweets that you engaged in, that I engaged in, and a few other people too, that really showcases how now, right now, at least within the conservative movement, we're starting to see some anti-atheism talking points kind of push back, and how it's very important for us to kind of push back against those talking points. So I'm going to add this to the stream. A lot of wording right there, but basically, I made a tweet responding to Tucker Carlson, responding to Charlie Kirk, saying, really disappointing to see that clip of Tucker saying he has no tolerance for atheism at this point, especially since we at Atheists for Liberty sponsored the TPUSA Student Action Summit in the past, where we encountered lots of atheists and agnostics that are a part of TPUSA chapters and watch shows such as Tucker's. It's followed up by a response tweet by AFL board chairman Michael Trollin, where he says it's not a good strategy for them to alienate atheists. Atheism is on the rise, with no signs of slowing down. Tens of millions of atheists vote Republican in the latest U.S. election. Better to include freedom-loving atheists rather than shut them out. And I'll also say, for the record, we're a 501c3 org. We're not a right-wing organization. We're not a conservative organization. We're not a Republican or libertarian organization. We're Atheists for Liberty. We have a unique mission that has people from various different backgrounds joining in on us. But there's some photos of us at the TPUSA Student Action Summit in 2020. We paid thousands of dollars for a booth to have a hotel location right next to the venue. We hung out with advisors and friends of ours in our organization. We went there because we knew of a great job that TPUSA was doing on college campuses to combat wokeism. And people were telling us, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're an atheist, you're welcome into our big tent. And we still believe in that big tent philosophy. If you want to work with us and put your differences aside with us on either religion or a certain political issue, whatever, if you agree with us on 65 to 70% of everything else, let's do it. And so we had a great time at SAS. It's just very disappointing to kind of see that rhetoric coming from Charlie. Even though I know he's an evangelical, he's also a businessman who has claimed at least that he wants to have a big tent. But we also have a bunch of other things. So this was your promotion, I know, for your article. Godless does not mean morally depleted. Many atheists are good people with a robust commitment to the Enlightenment values of individual liberty and bold truth-seeking. The right would be prudent to welcome them. I think that's a very good promotion. And again, I want to say here to everybody, I know I'm talking like a storm here, but guys, go to the description of this stream, sign up for Colin Wright's Substack article, Reality's Last Stand. It's very important for us to support independent content creators who are doing what they can to speak the truth about various different topics. People are getting banned and deplatformed from social media sites to payment processors, to credit card companies and banks. And we have to do what we can to support people who actually speak up and speak the truth about various different matters, even if it's not politically correct. We also have his social media links down there. And all of you can also support us by going to Facebook. If you have a Facebook account, go to facebook.com/atheistliberty and go like our page up on there. We're always trying to post updates on things that we're doing as an organization on Facebook. So if you have a Facebook account, go up on there, but also sign up for Colin Wright's Reality's Last Stand. That is a great promotion, I got to say, Colin, on social media. And on the topic alone, you got hundreds of likes. You got a bunch of quote tweets and retweets. It's not like this is a subject that is like, no one's going to care. No one's going to pay attention. This is some interesting stuff. And there's a reason why this is a topic that people still need to honestly talk about.
I found the responses to be really polarized, as you might expect, because there is like this idea that atheist does mean, without morals, don't have a moral compass. I did the podcast You Are Here with Eliza Schaefer before, and he's an evangelical Christian. And I just remember him asking me about, well, if I'm an atheist, how can I even be against, the whole child mutilation things? It's like, well, what are you talking about? This is like, just because I don't happen to believe in the one God you believe in doesn't mean that, I'm okay with torturing children or mutilating them. It's just complete non sequitur. I don't know where people get this idea, but it's such a prevalent idea that, we're getting our morals or we treat ourselves as God. And that, or we're just completely making it up as we go along. But there is like a robust history of moral philosophy that you can pull from. And at the end of the day, it's that question of, where is the Christian, getting their morals? Are they getting it from the Bible? Like how are they able to go to the Bible and say that a certain thing, and they're like stoning gay people, which most of, I would hope, Christians reject doing. I don't see a lot of stonings happening in the U.S. But if they're getting their morals from the Bible, then they would not be able to distinguish between the good and the bad bits of the Bible.
Yeah.
But the good bits stand out to them because they have this morality that is separate from the Bible that they're applying to it. And I would argue that this is sort of that secular morality that is available to everybody. That's partly cultural, it's partly evolutionary. And this can be taught, and it can be grounded in reason. It's not just, anything goes. I really am shocked that we're still talking about this, because this is the same stuff we were talking about over a decade ago when New Atheism was in full swing. And they just haven't learned from what we're trying to tell them what we believe. They just try to assert that, they know what we believe better than we do. It's really
exactly. When people say atheism is so 2010, New Atheism is a dead movement. No, it's not. Atheism is not going anywhere. And what we're seeing right here proves that more atheist activism is needed. We need to still rightfully show these activists that just like you're against CRT, just like you are in favor of facts over feelings, just like you're against gender ideology, just like you're against all this stuff that one would consider to be a dogmatic religion. Some of these people, like Charlie Kirk, even calls wokeism a secular religion, using religion in it when he bashes all this stuff. Gee, doesn't it remind us of something? Yeah. The evolution versus creation debates.
Yeah, it's funny when they use the fact that wokeism is a religion as like a disparagement, even though they themselves are religious in another direction. It's always interesting when they do that.
So I think that was a great promotion, but it doesn't end there. Our friend and fellow Atheist Liberty Advisory Board member James Lindsey got involved in this debate, and I've noticed this, and I got to commend him for it. He's very passionate about bashing Christian theocracy and Christianity. And he hangs out with more people in the conservative movement probably than both of us do. So when responding to that clip, firstly he pasted the image of an article saying Methodist Church first queen pastor. Because even within Christianity and certain Christian churches, they're woke. It's not like Christianity is this magical, amazing force that is free of wokeism, that Christianity is going to be this magical force that's going to turn the tide against leftist dogma, when half of these churches are already being infiltrated by the very ideologies that the conservative. So if you're a religious conservative activist like a Charlie Kirk or a Tucker Carlson, you would have more in common with a Colin Wright or a Thomas Sheedy or a James Lindsey than a woke Christian on those matters. So it's not like this is the consequence of secularism, the consequence of atheism. It's a consequence of wokeism, which is separate from godlessness. I bet plenty of woke religious people too.
I mean, so the whole woke thing is, it didn't like emerge within secularism. I would say it's sort of just like this tectonic thing. It's emerged from the ground beneath, everybody, and it's infecting just sort of secular and religious ideologies alike. And so they just need to, band together, which is I'm trying to do, form that big coalition of people with sort of this commitment to evidence-based reason, logic, modernist approaches to logic and reason. And I mean, that's the only way that we can make it out of this, is if we form our alliances based on that, at least until there's something else larger to argue about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But and it's through forging those alliances. I'm going to continue to do that, even if I fail, even if people scoff and say, hey, the atheists want to. You want to see a table? Sure. That's a very interesting idea. Thank you so much for coming, or thank you so much for sponsoring. It doesn't matter. I think we should hold our heads high and do our best to try to show people genuinely that we are trying to be on the same side, at least when it comes to defending Enlightenment values, defending the freedom of religion, which means promoting a freedom from religion. promoting freedom of speech, defending Western civilization. I have the same end goal that Tucker Carlson has. I have the same end goal that Charlie Kirk has, at least politically, at least culturally, to defend our country and to defend the free place that we all love and cherish. We just don't believe that a magical creator in the sky is the reason for why this country is amazing. But James is really funny. Look at all this stuff. He quotes Tucker Carlson. My tolerance for atheism was really dwindled. I get the frustration, but it turns out to be a bad diagnosis. Columbine United Church. You got the BLM LGBT flag mixed in together. All are welcome. But again, Colin, it's atheism that's at fault.
Yeah.
And then you got James. It's like I can just imagine him sighing when he was typing this out. Like religious liberty. Like that's the reason. Like why? Yeah. Why even bother at this point? Like he was saying, like, why even bother? I'm assuming he's saying, like, why am I even bothering with trying to communicate to people in this movement about like why we're doing what we're doing?
Yeah, there's an issue we have with the current atheist movement because, as I mentioned, they were taken over by a very political movement, which is now indistinguishable from sort of the woke left. And so when you look at sort of the forward-facing people of atheism, who own all the atheist organizations, atheists for American atheists, whatever. You see a lot of just woke crap. And so people will get the bad impression that, all atheists are super woke. And while a lot of atheists are, I would say, the people who are like you and me, who would like to go to the atheist conferences, if we were to show up there, they have this immune response to us. And so it's, they kick us out. I've been trying to have discussions with Seth Andrews, with Matt Dillahunty, this type of stuff. They won't even talk to us anymore. So we can't even get into the atheist movement, even though we're atheists. And so it just makes this false image of what atheism actually is, because all the people who would, break that stereotype just aren't invited anymore to the.
It's why we build AFL. It's like I didn't even like creating. Like, don't get me wrong, I like doing what I'm doing, but I would much prefer that American Atheist takes the reins, or the Freedom from Religion Foundation, or the Secular Student Alliance, or the American Humanist Association take the reins and does what Atheist for Liberty is doing. We are doing what all these former atheist organizations, now woke organizations, claimed to be doing and used to do years ago. We're normalizing atheism. We have reactionary talking points. We're stating things as they are. We talk about radical Islamic terror because that was a big thing that triggered the new atheist movement to exist in the first place. We don't pull punches when it comes to religion.
I'd say that the reason you can know that atheism is more political, at least the sort of woke atheism side of things, they're more political than they are even about atheism, is because they probably would distance themselves from Atheists for Liberty. They probably wouldn't even want to be at the same conference with you guys.
Yeah.
But if you're all about atheism, wouldn't your goal be, like, wouldn't you be really happy that there are these sort of atheist organizations that are cropping up that are, more sympathetic to maybe some values that you find on the right more frequently? Like, they should be celebrating the fact that that you exist and that you're spreading atheism in corners of the world where they don't mingle. So
it shows you
the fact that they shun you, it shows that it's political. It's not that they even care about atheism anymore.
Exactly. They don't care about atheism. They don't put atheism first. So we actually put atheism first. So
yeah, if you go to like the American Atheist Twitter account, I think I did this to some of the big organizations, and I go down. And it's like, well, what do they talk about? Most of it is just like LGBT stuff first, and then they have like an atheist angle that they'll sort of tack on at the end. But like, it's clearly not like the main thing that they're doing. It's just wokeness, woke people who happen to be atheists. So that's what it is.
Yeah, don't count me in on that. And not to mention, even if we tried to get in like we did, they decline us at the door. And I've seen it happen time and time again with our own advisors, with members of our staff, with people on the board of directors of AFL. They don't want us in their dying club of wokeism, which is fine. But now, as a result of that, we have to, and as a result of other things too, we have to fight a two-front war. But we got James still being super funny. But yeah, James is not pulling punches, and I'm like he's responding to a guy who said, "I'm an atheist, but even I realize that Christianity is almost the only thing truly opposing leftist woke fascism. I wouldn't be so LOLing to see even some of them being taken over by the most awful religion in the world today, wokeism." And James says some Christians are. So he's commending Christians, and we should be commending religious allies that respect us and that are in the fight with us against wokeism and against theocracy and against authoritarian dogma of any kind. But he does say Christianity certainly isn't. Even the conservative churches are hugely corrupted with it, meaning wokeism. Literally, I guess he must have been really, really mad that night, and I don't blame him. I was just as mad. He posted a meme, anti-atheist Christians, and then Scooby-Doo taking off the mask, showing that those people really are the same type of authoritarians that we criticize the woke left of being. So I commend James for really, I guess, staying quite active on his phone that night. But it's not just this one incident as well. This, by the way, everybody, this is all happening in just January of this year alone. This is why I found it to be so important to have Colin Wright back on, to literally have a whole episode of the stream be mainly about this. You have Ben Shapiro. There was an incident I remember that was happening in the public schools where a lot of anti-woke people were comparing, I think this was like the woke BLM LGBT flag being paraded around in public schools to the 10 Commandments being in public schools. And Ben Shapiro was like calling all of us out, saying, I see a lot of people arguing that this is the equivalent of the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms. No, the issue is not an Establishment Clause nicety. The 10 Commandments are good, and this wokeist garbage is bad for children. The problem is if you betray any of the 10 Commandments, the penalty is death. And some of the 10 Commandments I'll argue are good. Some of them not so good. And
the reason Ben wouldn't kill someone today for violating them is because of secular values that have molded a lot of these, the extremes of Christianity to its will. So yeah, it's just
it's unfortunate stuff, but I'm glad there's more of a pushback, and not even a hostile pushback. I don't think you and I and Atheists for Liberty, we're not tweeting back in the name of, oh my God, how dare these people. Like, I'm coming at it from, I love you guys when it comes to the topics of criticizing wokeism. You just happen to be really wrong on this, and it's very unfortunate. Like the AFL account. How about neither? How about neither? Maybe it's a good thing that the public schools focus on promoting critical thinking and not the 10 Commandments and not, the BLM LGBT flag. So then we have, our friend, Jack Posobiec, and I know Jack. I get along with him. I've seen him at several different conferences. I played pool with him and his brother. He's a very chill guy, really, really nice person. And I know he's a Christian. I understand that. He's not an atheist by any means. He's a very passionate Christian, but I just found it to be very silly that he tweeted this out. This was on Monday. He said, "What if the Antichrist is secularism?" Like, this is an actual point that needs to be brought out into the Twitter sphere of public policy and political science.
Shower thought coming out.
Yeah, like that's something that really needs to be taken seriously. Like, we got James here saying, like, what if it's not? He's not, he's not being nice at all, and I don't blame him. We got you rightfully responding, saying, "I really hope defeating wokeness doesn't empower this narrative. Please no." This is why I thought about getting you on, because it's scary and it's unfortunate, and we're playing by the rules of let's put our differences aside. The other side of this anti-woke movement needs to do the same. And then another person I greatly respect, Dr. Jordan Peterson, who has swept the Western world in telling young men to have more responsibility in their lives, to clean their rooms, and to be better in their personal relationships with their friends and families and loved ones, who's combated wokeism on college campuses and in the media for years and has been just a champion of free thought in so many great ways. He ended up, putting out, in my view, a silly tweet saying atheistic hedonists unconsciously worship Pan. And I respond by saying atheistic person here, at Jordan B. Peterson, I like you a lot, but we don't worship Pan nor any other gods. And there are different people that were responding to me, and they all had different answers as to what Jordan Peterson was really meaning. And maybe he was being more philosophical when he was talking about Pan as a concept. Maybe he wasn't meaning all atheists and talking about specifically atheistic hedonists. But I think from a branding standpoint and from a standpoint of reaching out to more people, especially as he's seen as a man of science. He's platformed people like Steven Pinker on his program. He comes off as like a new atheist type, he really does. And when you ask him about the God question, it's not really a yes or a no when it comes to him. And I say this out of respect. So I made that tweet as well. And luckily, on the most part, most of the responses have been positive and not negative. But I just find it to be very, very weird that that this has all been happening just within the month of January alone. So, but I know that you've been very passionate on Twitter just this entire month in fighting back against this stuff. And like I said earlier in the stream, I want to say thank you for doing what you did.
Yeah, I mean, it's just seeing a lot of this Christian saber rattling is a little unsettling, to say the least. So, I'll push back more if I need to, but it kind of goes up and down. Yeah, we'll see if we need to address this in a bigger way moving forward.
Well, the fun doesn't end there, Dr. Wright. I told you a little bit before we went live on the air. There is something else that I found today. I always like to just watch random YouTube videos that pop up on my feed. I always like to know what's going on in the culture wars. It's important in my view that if you want to be fluent in stuff, you just got to watch endless amounts of content. And I like the Daily Wire, personally speaking. I think that the Daily Wire came out with a wonderful documentary, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? This was done back in 2022, I believe. Great documentary. I hope all of you that have a subscription check it out. It's really, really cool. They have a lot of great hosts. I follow them when it comes to their discussions on a variety of different public policy topics. And this is meant with no disrespect. I'm also a former Prager Force volunteer from 2019. I was kind of dabbling into the conservative conference scene before Atheists for Liberty premiered years ago, and I was still in college. And I joined and volunteered for this thing called Prager Force, where you share PragerU content, where they're rightfully defeating wokeism on the college campus and showing the hypocrisy when it comes to woke leftism. And you get points and stars, and you get to meet certain people. And I thought this is a cool program to support. So I've always liked PragerU as well. Well, the Daily Wire has been trying to promote Daily Wire Plus, which is, I guess, their own subscription streaming service. And so they've been teaming up with a variety of different conservative content creators. Conservative content creators, though, that claim to be very big tent and broad and, we're in this new fight now and let's team up and work with as many people of as many differences as possible. And they are doing a master's program, a PragerU master's program, led by Dennis Prager himself, a new series, a video series that's going on Daily Wire Plus. And I saw the trailer, and well, I'll just play it for all of you. And by the way, everybody, credit to Daily Wire Plus. This is all Daily Wire's material. Respect to them, like them, but I'm going to play the trailer here because, you'll see how it opens up. I think we can chat about it for a few minutes, maybe a little in depth based on some of the stuff that you'll see here.
If society gets too secular, it ends.
What is the biggest moral crisis facing the country right now?
Whenever I summarize my life's work, there has been one overwhelming theme: the consequences of secularism. The general modern belief is you can be too religious, but you can't be too secular. But it's not true. If society gets too secular, it ends. You've got to ask the right questions about life, or you can't come up with the right answers. We become stupid as we depart from that book that people laugh at called the Bible. And this is all a function of the secular world in which we live. And I speak on a lot of things. I've been on radio for 40 years. I've addressed literally thousands of topics. These talks are what I consider the most fundamentally important messages I can give to people. I am not making the case here for the truth of any given religion. We're appealing to the mind, the great gift, the separator of the animal and the human, the mind. What is the world in which human rights were enshrined, where women were elevated? These developed in the West. The West was formed by Christianity. And again, I'm a Jew telling you this. I have no axe to grind here. My axe to grind is what is true. I'm Dennis Prager, and this is the Masters Program.
The Masters Program. So, I know he said he has no axe to grind and that he's not trying to promote any specific religion, but then he talks about, the truth. I wonder what he thinks the truth is. And for anybody who knows Dennis Prager's background, I'm not trying to go after him on an ad hominem basis, but if anybody knows about Dennis Prager's background, he has, before this kind of anti-woke movement kind of kickstarted, when the new atheist movement was very popular, he was known as the guy who would ferociously debate all the new atheists on the topic of religion. And when PragerU did come out several years ago, originally a good chunk of the videos were just anti-atheism, anti-secularism videos. People have made entire YouTube series debunking PragerU on the topic of religion. But I like PragerU when it comes to a variety of other things. I think PragerU has done a great service when it comes to a bunch of things. And I have friends who support PragerU very deeply. I know that there are some people there who know you too. Again, not meant to be a hostile thing, but that is the newest promotion for this big series that they showcased today for Daily Wire Plus. And I find it to be a very silly concept. The consequences of secularism. They were showing footage of the Soviet Union as if that's secularism's fault. They're showing, madness and riots in the streets as if that's atheism and secularism's fault.
It seemed like he was just trying to take or give Christianity or this religion credit for basically everything good in the world, and atheism, secularism is responsible for everything bad, just by definition. He even threw in things like women's rights, and I saw like the slavery abolition, whereas like there were a lot of religious arguments against extending rights to women, and slavery specifically in the Bible. So the idea that it is just religion, maybe Christians happened to be the majority of abolitionists because there was just no one else to do it at the time. There was almost everyone was Christians. It doesn't mean that abolitionism was encoded within Christianity. I mean, quite the opposite. So they can kind of flip-flop between these whole Christians did this versus Christianity, and then they'll give the fact that Christians did something, they'll credit Christianity with it, even though those are people versus like an ideology or the belief system. And then this idea that you can't, that if you're too secular, all of a sudden, the heads start rolling or something. It's just, he said you need to ask the right questions for meaning in life, but you don't need to ask religious questions to get meaning. There are secular ways to find meaning in the world. You don't have to have this ultimate, meaning, that's coded in the stars for you. I mean, plenty of people can have these proximate meanings to their life. And I don't find that I have this giant, meaning gap in my life. I get meaning through many other things. And I think a lot of people feel that same way as well. I mean, there are ways you can just spiral into nihilism, but that's not entailed into secularism. You're doing something wrong. And it's not to say that no Christians are nihilists. So it's just a mess. I don't, it's not even wrong. I don't even know exactly where to begin.
I don't know what the heck is up with January of 2023 and all these incidents happening just simultaneously. But I don't know what's in the water in the movement. But whatever they're drinking, I'd like to know.
I think they're also doing a documentary with Jordan Peterson. I think they're doing a biblical series of some point too. So I mean, that's fine. I know that the Daily Wire, they're explicitly conservative.
Right.
They don't say they're explicitly Christian though, because Ben Shapiro is a Jew. Matt Walsh is a Catholic. So there's incompatibilities there. I just think it would probably be really good for them to bring on a secular conservative and have, where's a documentary about that? Where's, they could have a pundit that
especially since they're trying to be the biggest platform there is. I know.
if you look at the demographics of atheism on both the right and the left, like the younger people are by and large atheistic.
Yeah.
So they're going to need to appeal to these demographics in one way or the other. And you can either teach the values, in a secularized version that's still very effective. I think that's the way you can go about doing that. You don't need to have the supernatural component in order to like teach these certain values. I think that's just a big lie.
Especially since they're trying to grow a coalition. That's the branding. Like, oh, we are this big tent. Look at all the different hosts we have with all their different backgrounds and everything like that. So if they really are trying to be this more Zoomer friendly, like non-boomer kind of media outlet that they're trying to be, they really are trying to look like a cool new 21st century kind of thing now. Then I think they can, with respect to the good stuff that's going on there, I think they can definitely improve in that department.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth us as the anti-woke atheists who also go to these spaces, who also see these same activists at the same wine parties, who rightfully work with these people on the things that we can agree to work with them on. I think we need to realize, as people that are in this culture war, that we have more power than we think we do. You are a respected gentleman who has, put his entire work over the last few years into rightfully critiquing gender ideology and the spiral of madness that we're going into as a civilization. Now, we're going to talk about that too in just a moment. So I think if more of us respectfully push back and say like, hey, we're godless. We believe in the same values overall that you do, just we don't derive it from a creator. We want to preserve Western civilization. We like promoting things like reality. I really don't think we're going to get a lot of hate and cancellations as some of us think that we are. And so just seeing you and seeing James and seeing more people on Twitter now coming out of the ether and saying like, hey, like, we're with you against wokeism. We are with you in being in these communities and, putting our expertise to the test on the public stage, going on, national cameras in order to promote what we're promoting. Let's just be treated, fairly, and let's actually be respected based on the branding that you guys are trying to promote. I think if we do that more, we're going to meet a lot of great success, and we're going to be helping all these great people who we disagree with on this one issue at the end of the day.
I agree. And it's not to say that I think the Daily Wire should become secular.
Sure.
But they need to make room for it, expand that tent to include it among other things. I mean, again, that healthy debate you can have Ben Shapiro, who's the Jewish pundit, Matt Walsh, he's the Catholic, as long as you can include within the tent of conservatism what they're trying to do, include an atheistic viewpoint, or just if they just want to call it secular, because that would just be really important. And then the secular people can at least find some representation of their values in that tent. And I think
their platform would grow. It would benefit them too.
Yeah.
It's a net benefit for them. When we go to CPAC every year, we benefit CPAC because we bring more of an atheistic presence there. And it makes all the atheists and agnostics, a ton of them that come up to our booth and hang out with us at our parties, they want to come by the following year and the following year and the following year. Some of them latch onto us and become friends with us and hang out in our online events on Discord. They just want to come to these conferences afterwards, not because even sometimes of the content that's there, but because they want to see us. So we're doing these communities and these movements a service by adding our perspective there, a perspective based on growing demographics, based on data that's showing that we're becoming a more secular country, that this is going to be the future, even of the conservative movement. The future of the conservative movement is going to be secular. We're just the ones that are admitting it now. So I think it's a very good. I think we went through a lot of this here, and I want to thank you for having a good chat, at least on those topics. But let's talk about you a little bit more. So, like I said a minute ago, you have been fighting for the last few years, combating gender ideology, combating wokeism. Using your expertise and your academic expertise in order to really fight for what you believe is a core element to preserve civilization. And you are soon going to be releasing a book, and the book is the book is called Reality's Last Stand: Gender Ideology and the Modern Denial of Sex. And I'm super excited for whenever that book does release. I would love to maybe have you on again to discuss even more deeper elements of the book. And believe me, everybody, I already arranged this with Colin before the show. We're going to get copies for any of you $20 a month members or above. If you request a copy of Dr. Wright's book, you're going to get one. But if you'd like to go into detail about the book, I'd love to hear it. I know a lot of people in the audience would love to hear about it too.
Yeah, so it's really supposed to be something that anyone can pick up. It's aimed to the average American, average English speaking person, really, not just Americans, who maybe needs a refresher about, biology 101. They've maybe seen in their schools that people are identifying as non-binary. They hear that sex is a spectrum, it's a social construct. What is a man? What is a woman? These are somehow big questions in our society these days. And there's a lot of sort of sand that activists can throw in the gears that can confuse people. They can make sex seem like it's more complex than it really is by showing these graphs that have all these lines moving all over it and a big intersex, the spectrum. And here's all the intersex conditions along the whole thing. And everything's so complicated. We just need to throw our hands up and no one knows what a male and a female really is. That's sort of kind of what they try to do. It's like this Gish Gallop trying to get people to just be, like deer in the headlights, and then you just do whatever they say because, they made it seem so complicated. So it's really just sort of getting back to the basics of what it means, what males and females are, why sex is binary, why it's not a spectrum, sort of the history, the evolution behind biological sex, and just getting down to the first principles of what we know, how we know it, and then highlighting a lot of gender ideology and sort of where this is disconnected from reality. And then, a big compendium of ways, to combat some of these arguments that are denying the reality of biology. So I'm hoping it's just something that people can really read and you have just a really grounded idea of what it is to be male and female, why there are only two sexes, why it's not a spectrum. And so everything, anyone who reads it, I think, should be able to walk away and have just about every answer that they could fathom in having a discussion with sort of like these woke gender ideology people who are denying biological reality. So that's the aim of the book.
When is it expected to be released?
So there's not expected. It's still in the writing process right now. I'm hoping later this year. So my ideal would be that it would come out like before Christmas. That's kind of what I'm shooting for. So
awesome.
Yeah, I got a flame under my butt to get this thing out. I'm kind of glad that I didn't get it because I was sort of floating the idea of writing it a couple of years ago. And then, things got really busy. I think now is probably the best time for it to come out, or at least this year, because it's on people's radars even more. Before, when you'd ask people about, people are saying sex is a spectrum, they would say, oh, no, they're just talking about gender identity. And, there wasn't this consensus that people were actually denying biology. But I think especially after What is a Woman, this is sort of everywhere now. And I think it's a good time for, a biologist to publish a really great sort of explainer on all this that people can dig their teeth into. And it's sort of the biggest issue somehow right now in society. So I'm hoping it'll land at the perfect time.
With respect to Richard Dawkins, you'll be able to do the one thing that he wishes he could do. Probably write a book about this very topic, and publicize this. So
I'm hoping to get him to blurb it or something. That'd be great. He could die happy.
Well, let us know when it comes out, when you're going to be promoting this. I'd love to get you back on to specifically discuss the book, and I'd love to see you have a successful, amazing book tour. All the best to you in that regard. So I think this is a great way to go into the Q&A and to showcase some questions and comments from the audience here. We'll do that for a little bit, and then we'll adjourn from the evening. But boy, did we unpack a lot. So, and thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for being a part of the conversation and for supporting Atheists for Liberty. Again, we're a 501c3 organization that stands for free speech, free thinking, and freedom for all. We're doing a lot of amazing things, both online and in person. And if you are interested in being a part of our community and fighting for secularism, fighting for the normalization of atheism to preserve free thinking, to safeguard secularism and advance individual liberty, you can join us today. go to atheistsforliberty.org and make a tax-deductible donation right now. Mean a lot, and we have a lot of amazing benefits and tiers that you can see right on the website, and we answer any and all questions to the best of our ability. And for those of you who like the content on this channel, be sure to subscribe to this channel, like this stream, and hit the notification bell. We go live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we have a lot of great guests lined up. I already explained a few of them in the beginning of the stream. We got Dr. Robert Price coming up soon. We got Dr. Gad Sad as well, and we got Yasmin Muhammad, along with others that we're booking. We have an entire team dedicated to getting more people booked on this program. So it really means a lot for you guys to support this channel and to support our organization and the amazing content that we're coming out with. Again, not only do we defend Enlightenment values, but we seek to learn from the greatest minds of the 21st century. And hopefully a lot of you are learning from Dr. Colin Wright right here, right now. So we'll get into answering some of your questions right at this moment. And comments too. Praise the Lord. Your destruction is near. Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. His kingdom comes. What an amazing positive first comment. Amen to that. Thanks for hosting this, guys. Far too often the religious monopolize conservatism. I agree. And again, we're not even strictly conservative. AFL is not a strictly right-wing or conservative org. Yeah, we have for liberty in the name, but it's because we really do stand by our values and mission. But we want to see the conservative movement too become less religious, and it'll help the conservative movement at the end of the day as well. We're doing them a favor. So thank you so much for the comment. House Son says, Republicans are the party of being tired of separation between church and state. The church is supposed to direct the government. No thanks. Not a big
supposed to, according to who? You know, that's maybe what a lot of the Christians want to do, but thankfully we have something called the Constitution that is a bulwark against that, and let's try to keep it that way.
Absolutely. TJ Tuttle says, absolutely glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in, TJ. Hope you're liking the show. TJ Tuttle, Texas State Director for Atheists for Liberty. Glad you're tuning in. Hey, yo. Hey, Stephen. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, Mars. Hope you're having a good time.
Hey, Mars. Let's go, Mars.
I know we both know Mars. He's awesome. He's helped out AFL with so many of our projects. He's sometimes the man behind the curtain too, depending on the streams. So I appreciate everything that Mars does. So Stephen has a comment here. I understand why Charlie Kirk said what he said, but I think AFL is meant to rally together atheists who cherish liberty. It's true, and I get it too. Charlie's an evangelical Christian. He's not an atheist at all. I don't think he's pretending to be a Christian either. But I do also know that he's smart enough as a businessman and as somebody who's trying to, at least with his branding, claim to be this big tent conservative movement guy, to want to include people of various different backgrounds and perspectives. That was at least the branding of what Turning Point USA, I know, was back in 2017, 18, 19. He said on the Rubin Report, when Dave Rubin asked him like about secular conservatives, he's like, well, with Turning Point, we're this amazing big tent. You know, we emphasize all that. So, you know, I do understand why he said that. As a private evangelical Christian, he has every right to be a Christian and a man of faith. But simultaneously, he should know better from a optics media standpoint on a show. He shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, and I'm shocked that there are atheists who don't cherish liberty, to be honest, because I mean, when you go back to it, I mean, the only reason atheists were able to even have a voice in the first place is because they had the liberty to speak and not be, you know, caned to death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why like a lot of the atheists that I know, at least the old school ones that got me into the atheist movement originally, was because of their really strong commitment to free speech and free expression. So it's really shocking and disappointing that, you know, maybe they're in hiding, but you don't see a whole lot of them anymore. So come out of the woodwork, because if AFL is here for you.
Please do, guys. We have state director opportunities available, volunteer opportunities available, internship opportunities available, and we could always use more of your time, more of your money, more of your support.
I know a lot of atheists have been burned from the previous movement, but you can come out. It's the waters are okay a little bit over here.
We've got Stephen saying again, if the right is trying to accept biological realities, then they should not advocate for religious creation stories. Also stop denying evolution. Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, a lot of my debating with creationists and intelligent design people has set me up for being able to debate a lot of the woke people on the whole denial of biological sex. You see a lot of the same types of arguments when I was, challenging the intelligent design people. Remember irreducible complexity, how the eye couldn't have possibly evolved because it's so irreducibly complex that, it's you can't have intermediate forms. Well, we see like a very similar kind of argument we have on the woke side regarding the biological sex, that sex is just so complex. We don't even know what it is. We can't diagnose whether a person is male or female. It's a different type of like argument from complexity. But man, once you just see these parallels, they all become so apparent. It's amazing. Same fallacies. Yeah. Debating creationists it was probably the best. I didn't realize it was like the dress rehearsal for this type of stuff. So, but I'm glad I had it.
I'm glad I got my atheist movement experience, because that was my introduction to politics. So, learning to debate theists and learning to disagree and see, what is objectively true and what is actually real and what is not. It's turned me as well into this amazing anti-woke activist that I am today too. So, all right, Stephen, I'll put up a third one for you, because I know you said for me to showcase it, and I will promise that. Question for Thomas and Colin: do you notice a strong streak of pessimism within members of the atheist movement? If so, why do you think this occurs, and what can we do to combat this?
Yeah, I mean, I do see it, and I see it in myself too, when I see, what we're trying to do, and then, the whole anti-woke movement is sort of breathing life into the religious authoritarians. So in a way, we're making things harder for ourselves as we're making them easier for ourselves in other ways. So as I said, politics is it's a big complex thing. You can't just make precision changes here. You kind of got to nudge the whole beast in one direction. And sometimes that's going to, create other problems in areas that you don't wish they were there, but you can't pick and choose. It's not like an a la carte thing. You have to just sort of nudge it in direction you think is the best overall net positive, even though, bad things are going to pop up there too. So it's just the way it is.
Got Dan Joseph saying, I hear you, Colin. So many people tell me they are open to voting Republican, not because they like the GOP platform, but because they just see the GOP as the lesser of two evils. The RNC needs to wake up. I agree. Hopefully with the RNC, getting more big tent. And I know there's a big debate politically over who's going to be the next RNC chair. Hopefully they smell what's in the room and kind of see that having a big tent mentality and kind of changing their optics a little bit, it's going to be a positive for them in the long run. That's my take.
Yeah. It seems like a much bigger decision to switch your vote from party to party, from one party to the other. But it doesn't really need to be a big ideological shift for you to vote, change your vote. Like, it really sucks that like voting is such a binary thing, because you're going to vote Democrat or you're going to vote Republican. Whereas if you're kind of already on the borderline, which I was always sort of like center left, my worldview really didn't shift a whole lot. If anything, I think it was the left that sort of pushed it out, that put me across the boundary. But, that is triggering a completely different vote, even though the ideological shift was very, very small. So we just kind of need to, normalize the fact that, we're stuck with this two-party system. Just because you're flipping your vote from one to the other seems like a drastic thing to do. But it's actually, if you're close to the line, it can just, I see 51% of my values over here now, as opposed to 51% that was on the left beforehand. So it's just unfortunately, we have to distill our entire complex worldviews into like a binary choice at the end of the year and vote accordingly. So yeah, it seems more extreme than it really is when you flip your vote.
That's why I do my best to just vote based on my principles.
Yeah, exactly.
Like personally, I belong to one party on a personal basis, not relating to AFL. We don't endorse parties or anything like that. But even within the party structure, I do like to do what I can to support the person who aligns with my values more.
Well, this is another thing that sort of the identity politics messed up in the whole thing, is because you have the Republican and Democrat, which become these political identities, but they kind of stand in for a spectrum of viewpoints. And so as I said, if you were to stand back and take a look at where your values are, they might now be on the right where they were majority on the left. But you flipping your vote to someone who, if you're in a friend circle and they're all Democrats, they're going to just see you as making this like, oh, what happened to you? You've completely changed your worldview. Well, it's like, well, no, I changed a label because I'm now 51% over here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the identity sort of tribal dynamics fuel people to sort of want to cling on to what they've always voted for, even if their values have like shifted over to the other side. So we just need to get people to like don't vote based on R&D. Vote based on, you're taking a step back and you're surveying the whole field, and you're seeing where are your values best reflected. And that's what you should do. We shouldn't. That's why I'm making a plan, and a very big point of having friends who are Republican, Democrat, neither, all in the middle, because that shouldn't really matter.
Yeah. Definitely doesn't for me, and I guess that's the highlight of having a 501c3 org. It forces you to get along with people of different party affiliations, so I'm already used to it. We'll go through this one quickly because I know we technically already answered it, but Mars, the way you framed it is good. I'm no fan of woke, but there appears to be a socially conservative counterculture, with some of the old religious arguments reappearing. Is there a threat of the pendulum falling back too far the other way? We already said yes to that, and unfortunately, it is a yes to that. I think we're making progress in a lot of great ways. More and more people, when you go to like CPAC or SAS or AmFest or #Revolution or LibertyCon, you'll find more and more atheists and agnostics there year by year. But even though the population of the people that go to these events and are in these movements and are employees of these organizations and interns and people, getting Sean Hannity coffee, more and more of them appear to be, secular people. There are people that are in these leadership positions that continue to espouse, and sometimes are now even doubling or tripling down on the old religious right talking points. And I think it's to their detriment. They're going against the very demographics and the very data that's showing that their movement's going in the other direction.
It's definitely going to. There is going to be an overcorrection. I mean, that's just the way it happens. You build up against a certain force, and then once you overtake it, you have momentum, and so you go too far. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to be, and so we just need to be able to, shift when it's appropriate to start criticizing the next thing. There'll always be a next thing. That's the center, the equilibrium point is the least stable place on the entire political spectrum, because you got these poles that are pulling both sides, which sort of creates these oscillations, and that's what it's going to happen. We can do it as best we can to sort of dampen the swings, but there's going to be an overcorrection. There's no avoiding it.
Stephen also has another question. What are your guys' thoughts on theological conservatism versus theological liberalism? Which one do you prefer? Neither. If we're talking about like theological, like leftism, if like wokeism, we're talking about like woke religious leftism. Yeah, I guess I prefer theological conservatism in that, like Colin, what you said, like the Dennis Pragers of the world and the Ben Shapiros of the world and the Jack Posobics of the world are at least willing to sit down and debate you about the topic and not get you thrown out of a place. So that's good. But when it comes to the objective value belief-wise with theological conservatism and theological liberalism, I'm opposed to both of them.
Yeah, I mean, because it's got the theological aspect on there. It depends how we're defining liberalism too, because there's sort of in the U.S. that's usually considered synonymous with like the left or progressivism. I tend to look at just the progressivism and conservatism as not really like these all-encompassing worldviews that you should have. Like, I'm a conservative, I'm a progressive. I think these are just like context-dependent things. There are certain things that require conservatism. Like if you're like aspects of the Constitution, I think if they're very robust, like you want to conserve that. In many ways, like I'm trying to conserve the reality of biology from people who are trying to muddle things up and assert that males and females aren't real. I'm taking a very conservative approach to that. But in some other areas, if there's The homeless crisis that we have, I would say that it's progressive to try to fix that problem. Whereas I see like a lot of the liberals who are making the problem even worse and contributing, they're kind of the conservatives who are trying to keep the status quo, and that's not progressive.
Yeah.
So it really depends on this certain issue whether or not conservatism or progressivism is called for. So again, we need to get away from the whole political labels that we're putting on yourself. I'm a conservative, I'm a progressive. These are context dependent strategies as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, TJ asking, Dr. Wright, do you view woke religionists as a simulacrum for the major specters of the biggest opponents to free thought and secularism? What does effective opposition to the specter look like?
That's a complex question. I'm not sure if I understand all of it there.
That's why I was giggling to it.
I do see a lot of, I see a lot of religion within the woke movement. I mean, this is, I think my involvement with atheism is what made my red flags sort of shoot up pretty early on. I could never fully buy into it. I kind of dipped some toes into it, maybe had 1 foot into that ideology for a little while. But I could never just 2 foot jump commit to it, because there was a lot of areas, especially around the whole sex stuff, that just seemed like they were completely bonkers, and they couldn't even talk about some of these things about sex differences. And so yeah, and they're very religious. So I do think that there is a religious streak. I think it is fulfilling like these meanings to people's lives that religion probably serves for a lot of people who are on the right or on the left. And so, yeah, I think there's tons of parallels. I know that they've been made in a lot of books. I mean, what is it? Woke Racism by John McWhorter, that very, explicitly argues about wokeism being a religion. And I think there's been a lot of other books that have done similar. And I think they're right in some ways. I mean, it's missing like this worship of a deity and stuff, but they are sort of worshiping some ideologies in many ways, and they have a lot of similar ways that they go about having these ideas about reality that aren't falsifiable, things like systemic racism or something like that, or the patriarchy or whiteness. These are just really vague terms that sort of permeate everything, and so similar to the way that you have like original sin and all these types of things. So there's definitely a lot of parallels that we have. I mean, privilege is very much just like a sort of sin type thing. There's an inversion of what's sinful and what's not. It's all religion when it comes to it, or at least it's coming from that same impulse. So I think that's
why I got a bad taste. I got a really bad taste in atheist think tanks when you started to see this kind of mental health, woke kind of religious language, like privilege, discussed in these kind of free thought circles. It definitely gave me a bad taste in my stomach, and eventually I got to the point where I just couldn't hide my opposition to social justice and wokeism within that community any further. Like I remember being in like a state director position in American Atheist, assistant state director, but also a bunch of other organizations where I've like literally had to sometimes go to the other room because I thought I was just going to passionately state something that could get me kicked out of a conference or written up in an atheist blog because I dare to speak up against the new religion of social justice. It's really disappointing, but it was through that atheist experience that I was able to kind of see the warning signs of a new religion that came.
Yeah, nothing's more indicative that it's a religion than what happens when you criticize it. Really, it's they shun the non-believer. That's where I realized something was up, because I was just making claims about what I thought was objective biology, and they weren't returning the favor of making objective claims with biology. They just went straight to the you're a bigot, transphobe, right, what have you. So it's an odd thing for a scientist to say to another scientist who says there's two sexes.
How dare you? You're not a scientist anymore. You're promoting the wrong science, the incorrect science. Yeah. I'm a Hillsdale grad. They get 90% of everything right, and the 10% is religious garbage.
That's what I hear. Yep.
Yeah, but they still do some cool stuff, and at least they'll do the whole we'll promote like the atheists who will even talk about atheism a lot. Christopher Hitchens was a guest on Hillsdale's program for a long time. I think Dawkins too, but plenty of new atheist types. So Hillsdale, compared to like other religious schools, is not so bad. But yeah, you're right about that. Let's see.
It's better than a lot of other colleges where it's 70% wokeism though. So.
We have Crescendo saying, I think the stigma of atheism has been worsened in the eyes of the religious as a direct result of social justice ideology being loosely tied to atheism. It means we have a little bit of extra work to do.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, when wokeism took over atheism, they're now just the face of atheism. So, I mean, I look at the atheist movement, I do nothing but cringe. I can't even look at it anymore. And that's coming from someone who's like so sympathetic to the atheist movement. Can you imagine if you weren't even sympathetic? Like, it's hard for me to give them the benefit of the doubt. Can you imagine a religious person giving the atheism movement the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
It means we have a lot of extra activism to do as a result of it, but I'm willing to do it. It has to be done anyways.
Yeah.
Mars saying, this is foolish. Secularism is the very reason why Christian denominations can practice their particular interpretations of Christianity. Like you said, Colin, the Constitution. That's what allows religious freedom to flourish. And he also said, I really like Jordan myself, but his religious takes are weird. Yeah, the kind of like the previous person's Hillsdale comment, like 90%. I like him. I love him. Like he's doing a service to civilization with a lot of his work. I think his religious stuff really doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's my same opinion of a lot of stuff Ben Shapiro talks about. Like I can listen to his show and then he'll start going off on Judaism, and it's like, okay, I'll wait till he's done with this, because both Jordan and Ben Shapiro, they do have like really brilliant minds in many topics that they like to touch on. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's still good to listen to people that we disagree with too, and it speaks to, I think, a real good thing that we do, which is to take people not as just like this, if you say one thing I disagree with, then you're out. I'm not going to listen to you. You're a moron. Right. I can listen to people that I disagree with maybe 80%. I can still find that 20% that I agree with, and I think they have really great insight upon. Like I occasionally listen to David Pakman, and sometimes, I think he's got a little partisan and too snarky sometimes, but he'll occasionally have some really good bits. And, when he's sitting down across from somebody having a discussion, it's not to his sort of his followers. He's a really insightful guy. So can be people like Ezra Klein. I've listened to some of his podcasts where I thought it was really great analysis on things, even though I would probably disagree with him on a lot of the woke stuff. So
I have the same view on Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk. Him and David Pakman. Like if I want to see like a kind of leftist, but like not so far left, like scream at you on college campus, kind of far left, perspective on something, I tune into their programs and I watch their clips, and I do the same for right-wing programming all the time too. The kind of, like I said, I going through just my YouTube homepage, looking at anything politics related, left or right, and just consuming it, because I think it's very good to be as well-rounded as possible. We have Kayla, Idaho State Director for Atheist Liberty, Kayla Saunders, saying, if the Antichrist is secularism, is Christ theocracy? Yes. I guess so. The concept of what Jack, I guess, said. Yeah, if the Antichrist is secularism, Christ would probably be promoting theocracy. I guess, like, based upon the framework of his argument. We got Mars saying, generally respect Jordan in several dialogues, but he goes into a word salad whenever he discusses God. What happened to be precise in your speech?
Yeah, no, he goes off the deep end when he talks about that. I mean, he can't give just a straightforward answer. It's really aggravating. That's even when he talks about just what truth is. I don't know if you remember that first podcast he had with Sam Harris, where they got bogged down for over an hour on just what do we mean by truth. And I thought Jordan made zero sense whatsoever. So
I like how practical it is, at least when it comes to debating Jordan. He's like, I'm able to really understand him. He doesn't come off as word salady. It's like he was trying to get Jordan to like admit, like, do you actually believe in this or do you not? And I don't get why we have to answer in these like nice little poetic philosophical metaphors. You'll be able to communicate a lot more clearly if you just answer yes or no to some of these questions. You know?
Yeah. He, for some reason, he's just not able to do that. I don't know if it's because he's trying to signal to a certain crowd, or if he, I don't know, hasn't thought about the things. He needs to sort of create these elaborate ways to sort of get around to have a Christian interpretation of something where he might be at base very secular. Because I will hear him when he's not specifically addressing a religious argument. He'll talk very secular. He'll talk about truth in a way that's, the way I, would define it. But then when you ask him what truth is, he'll go off on these, crazy tangents about religion and, just not having to be making contact with reality. But even though he used the word truth in a sentence before, where he was clearly talking about objective reality. So yeah, he's an odd one, but still worth listening to.
This is going to be an interesting question. What do you guys think of the Daily Wire Steven Crowder controversy? I'll go in real quick and just give my view on this. We have members at Atheist Liberty that actually, some of them like Crowder's take on the situation that happened to him. Some people like the Daily Wire and Jeremy Boring's perspective. I'm assuming you kind of know a little bit about this. This is kind of swept anti-woke and kind of the right-wing internet sphere. Steven Crowder got an offer after leaving the Blaze TV to go over to the Daily Wire. He made a video that surfaced up and got quite a bit of views, basically where he was criticizing some people in organized conservatism or conservative media as being a part of Big Con. And it ended up being that a part of the contract that he showcased, part of it that he showcased ended up being from the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire gave him an offer to come on for, I think, five years, being paid a total of $50 million to go on there. There's some philosophical arguments. I know that Stephen was talking about some business, practical, and kind of personal arguments made in response from some of the Daily Wire hosts and people in the Daily Wire. I will say, and I will be purposely political here, also not to suck you too much into this, that to be fair, the politics of this whole thing is still being played out. There's still information, I bet, that's going to be released more. I bet more people are going to make up their minds there. I will admit there are some times where I've seen the Daily Wire's take or a certain Daily Wire host take on the issue where I've totally sided with them. There are some people, some things that Crowder said and some things that were said on Tim Pool's program about this matter, where sometimes they came off as very principled, on their end as well. It's a mess. I don't like to get sucked into it, but I also thought it was very important for our members to know of the situation. So I did a watch party for the Tim Pool episode in our Discord server on Monday. That would be the 23rd of January for those that are watching this later on in the future. It's crazy. I remember watching Crowder when I was like a freshman in college when Change My Mind was getting very big. I've watched Shapiro, and speaking of Daily Wire, a bunch of the Daily Wire hosts when it comes to at least getting the conservative view on my YouTube feed on different events. This is going to spiral into a big conflict, I do think, but I also know that it's gray and nuanced to a degree.
Yeah, it is more nuanced than a lot of people give credit for. I did watch some clips from Crowder on Tim Pool. And I think there is some legitimacy to the way the contracts are put together and how they conflict with the idea that we're fighting big tech, but we're going to penalize you based on big tech penalizing you. But then I can also see it from the Daily Wire's point of view that we're a company, we need to make money. So if your revenue streams get cut off, then we can't assume all of this and this risk. So, but then at the end of the day, it wasn't even a contract. It was like a terms sheet. And so
yes, term sheet.
Given that it wasn't just sort of a take it or leave it offer, I think I lean slightly more at the Daily Wire, even if the contract wasn't good and it wasn't perfect. And even if it was bad, because could have come back with vented all those issues with the Daily Wire and see if they would have been just like, oh, you were
Contact
right.
your attorney,
Our
write up
values
on
actually
the
go
feed.
this way, and we're not gonna dock you for X, Y, and Z. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was unnecessary, but I do think it's important to talk about sort of where conflicting values exist in these sort of contracts, when you're saying you're against big tech, but you're reliant upon it in your contracts, and you're not protecting the people that you're signing up from big tech. There's issues there for sure. Could have been handled better, I think, in leaking phone calls and all of this whole thing. So it's
We're going to see more of the fallout of this, but I definitely know, we're in a lot of the same spaces, like Turning Point USA, 501c3 organization that does a lot of anti-woke stuff. Same as Atheists for Liberty. They have a media section of their organization where they have their own shows. Speaking of Jack Posobiec, he has Human Events Daily, on the TPUSA network, basically. Just like how we have the streaming series, and we're going to come out with more like YouTube type shows in the future and do more segments. It's things like this that you get sucked into in terms of discussing, getting pulled into it. So I'm not surprised that Stephen ended up asking the question, or someone ended up asking the question, but it's something I do think that we're not going to see the end of anytime soon. But I think this is a good spot to end the show for this evening. Like us on Facebook again, guys, facebook.com/atheistliberty. Follow us on Twitter @atheistliberty. Go to our Instagram. We have a lot of great graphics, but we have a Linktree profile as well that lists all of our other social media and endeavors. That's on our Instagram profile. You can find that at Atheists for Liberty. We're doing a lot here, both online and in person. Sign up and become a member today. You get to be part of our Discord server and our Facebook group, where we do online events, public speaking workshops on having impossible conversations every single Wednesday, and we do Sunday night discussions, and we're having regional meetups across the country. We already have a third of the size of state directors that American Atheists has. And American Atheists has existed since 1963. You know how we started our state director program, guys? 2020 through a hot tub conversation. And already we have more strength and activity in terms of in-person activities. And we're kicking it off with regional meetups. So we're going to be in New York City on Saturday, February 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern at the Metropolitan Republican Club. I'm going to be there. And a lot of you, I know, have already RSVP'd via our Eventbrite link. Details can be found on our social media pages. So please go on there, find our Eventbrite link, guys, and please sign up. Tickets are free for that. So if you're in New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut, you want to come by to a free event with free food and free drinks and free snacks, and network with me and meet a bunch of other atheists from the area who are involved deeply in this culture war, definitely check that out. We're also going to be at CPAC 2023. This is going to be our 4th CPAC as an organization, March 1st to the 4th, back in National Harbor, Maryland, on the D.C. border, basically Washington, D.C., guys. So if you guys are going to CPAC anyways, or thinking of maybe going to CPAC, Atheists for Liberty and a lot of the great staffers, board members, and some advisors even are going to be there. So come hang out with us. We're going to have some special events there too, and some goodies to give away at our booth. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell to see more content. Again, as well, become a member. We would love to have all of you here, and the benefits are increasing because we're listening to you. We're listening to you. We want to continue to defend Enlightenment values and push for this new age of reason to continue. Tune in next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for our next stream. Colin, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll have you on for round 3 soon enough, but with everything that's happened, with everything that's going on now, a pushback.
We could do a weekly show.
We'll make it work. We'll make something work. We're going to be in talks, but Colin, you've been such a great supporter and amazing advisor to this organization. We're going to be doing a lot more together, and I'm so happy that you've taken the time to come on the show. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week.